The following presentation is brought to you by Discovery Education, leading the world of digital and video learning. Discovery Education, connect to a world of learning.
Strap on your seatbelts because Assignment Discovery is traveling faster than a speeding bullet in Elements of Physics, Light and the Electromagnetic Spectrum.
First, we'll answer some questions that baffled some of history's greatest scientists in the nature of light.
Then we'll learn why we see what we see in Properties of Light.
Next, we'll explore an entire spectrum of energy in putting electromagnetism to work.
And finally, we'll watch as light is transmitted from around the world to your living room in The Wonder of Television.
Riding the waves of physics, coming up next.
How do you use electromagnetic waves?
I use electromagnetic waves for radio, TV, sunbathing.
Satellite TV. My big dish on my house picks up the waves.
So I know that we use them in microwaves. We use microwave.
I definitely use FM radio in the car, and my mom listens to AM, but I don't really like it.
I actually just recently had to get an X-ray done with me, so that's how I use it.
I have a wireless network at home, which I know communicates with somewhere around microwaves.
Chemotherapy and radiation type things to cure cancer.
Basically, all my communication at home and at school goes through electromagnetic waves.
As you watch the first part of this program, keep these questions in mind.
How do lenses affect light?
What are some common uses of electromagnetic waves? Light is so integral to existence that it is impossible to imagine a universe without it, and yet often we forget about how much we rely on it. For the ancients, science was grounded in observation. Even today, many of the questions science attempts to answer begin with an unusual sight. But we would not be able to make observations or see the world at all without light. But what is light? We can't touch or taste or hear it, and usually we can't even see light completely on its own. We see light as it is filtered through the atmosphere and reflected off different surfaces. To understand light, we need to understand a larger group of energy, known as electromagnetic waves. Light is a very small part of the electromagnetic spectrum, and all the types of waves in this spectrum share certain properties. All forms of electromagnetic energy, including light, are waves. And as waves, they all have frequency. Frequency is usually defined as the number of waves that pass a certain point in a second. The difference in frequency is a result of the size of the wave. A longer wavelength corresponds to a lower frequency. Electromagnetic waves are organized into types based on frequency. At one end of the spectrum are radio waves, which have the lowest frequency. The spectrum moves through microwaves, infrared rays, visible light, ultraviolet rays, and X-rays, to gamma rays, which have the highest frequency. Electromagnetic waves are a result of electric and magnetic fields. Electricity and magnetism are related because they both result from the movement of electrons. When electrons move, they release energy in the form of electromagnetic waves. Frequency is directly correlated to energy. The higher the frequency, the more energy in the wave. Despite the differences in frequency, all electromagnetic waves travel at the same speed. Known as the speed of light and represented by the letter c, this value is a universal constant. The ancient Greeks debated whether the speed of light was finite, or if instead light traveled instantaneously. The work of several scientists and mathematicians, notably Christian Huygens and James Clerk Maxwell, has proved that all electromagnetic waves, including light, travel at the constant speed of 299,792,458 meters per second in a vacuum. The actual speed of light does change when electromagnetic waves are in different substances. For example, light travels faster through water than it does through glass, and it is faster in both those materials than when traveling through diamond. The speed of light in a vacuum is significant because according to the work of Albert Einstein, nothing in the universe can travel faster than an electromagnetic wave. The speed of light is a sort of physical speed limit for the universe. As a constant, light speed is universally used as a measurement for extremely long distances in space. The distance light can travel in a vacuum over the course of a year is known as a light year, a standard value in astronomy. Did you know? The universe is so vast that some objects are over 1 million light years away. This means that 1 million years have passed between when an event occurred on that object and when we see it on Earth. Seeing a star 1 million light years away is like looking 1 million years into the past.
Our vision often plays tricks on us, creating optical illusions from regular objects. These mirages can be explained by a scientific understanding of light's behavior. The physical properties of light allow us to see what's in the world around us. We see almost every object because light bounces off it. Some exceptions, such as light bulbs and stars, are luminescent, meaning that light comes from them. But in all cases, the only thing we see is light. The study of how light behaves is known as optics, which explains the reason we see things as we do. As a wave, light will travel in a straight line until it encounters an obstacle or is affected by a force. Then, the path of light can change. Most commonly, light is affected by reflection and refraction. Reflection occurs when light encounters an opaque substance and bounces off. The best example of this is a mirror, which reflects all the light directed at it. The angle at which light strikes a surface is called the angle of incidence, and the angle of reflection is the angle at which light bounces off the surface. The angle of incidence is always equal to the angle of reflection. Because light always behaves this way, the human brain understands the rules of optics. This is why we are able to see clear reflections in normal mirrors. The brain processes light bouncing off the mirror's surface and can interpret what an image should look like. However, the brain gets confused when the mirror isn't flat. A convex mirror rounds out like a small hill, and a concave mirror rounds in like a shallow bowl. The curvature of both mirrors affects the angle at which the light reflects, but the brain doesn't know this. So we see a distorted image. Other objects also reflect light. A bird feeder looks red because the plastic absorbs most of the light, but it reflects the red light waves. As a result, we see a red bird feeder. Refraction occurs when light travels through a transparent medium. Changing the substance through which light travels affects its speed and it redirects the light. One result of refraction is a distorted image. This pencil looks broken at the water's surface, but really the light is bent as it travels from the water into the air. A good example of refraction is a prism. Because a prism has a triangular shape, the wavelengths of the colors of light are refracted at slightly different angles. A prism splits white light into its constituent colors, and we see a rainbow. people have been able to harness the power of refraction. They have created lenses. A converging lens is similar to a convex mirror in shape, and a diverging lens is similar to a concave mirror. Light traveling through a converging lens bends inward toward a central focal point. Traveling through a diverging lens, the light bends outward toward the edges of the lens. An important part of the human eye is a natural converging lens. Light travels through the lens into the eye, and the lens focuses it onto the retina. From there, the brain interprets the focused image, and we see it. People who are farsighted or nearsighted see a blurry image because their natural lenses are unable to focus light correctly. Additional lenses, such as glasses or contacts, adjust the light to correct the image. Did you know? Sir Isaac Newton was the first person to explain how a prism works. Before Newton, scientists believed a prism added color to white light, but Newton was able to prove that the prism actually split the light into its constituent colors.
If we understand how light works, we can understand the principles behind the whole of the electromagnetic spectrum. This knowledge has been put to good use, improving our quality of life. Humans have evolved over millions of years to rely heavily on visible light for information about the world. But light isn't the only portion of the electromagnetic spectrum capable of carrying information, and human ingenuity and technology have developed ways to make use of almost every known type of electromagnetic energy. Radio waves have the lowest frequency in the spectrum. They broadcast AM and FM radio signals. Slight variations in frequency account for the different stations. A radio receiver transforms the information in the electromagnetic wave to the sound waves that we hear. But radio waves aren't just used for radio. They also broadcast television programs. Using a higher set of frequencies than radio stations, television stations broadcast their own signals without disrupting radio broadcasts. And instead of transforming the electromagnetic information into sound alone, television sets also translate visual information so we can hear and see TV. Radio waves and microwaves are the basis of communication for many common wireless devices, such as cordless phones and walkie-talkies. Even cell phones and GPS rely on radio waves. Microwaves lie at a slightly higher frequency than radio waves, so many of their uses, especially in telecommunications, overlap. Microwaves and radio waves are the basis for radar, which was developed during World War II to detect enemy airplanes. Radar operates by sending out radio waves, which bounce off aircraft in the area and return to a radio tower. Instruments interpret the bounce signal to determine an aircraft's location, speed, and direction. Infrared rays have a frequency between microwaves and visible light. One common application of the infrared spectrum is for night vision devices that help us see clearly in the dark. Infrared energy is absorbed by different materials and emitted as heat even when little or no visible light is available. Beyond infrared is visible light and then ultraviolet. Visible light is used to create lasers. Generated by the sun, ultraviolet waves are also emitted by black lights. As frequency increases, electromagnetic radiation becomes more dangerous to humans and other living creatures. The lower frequencies of ultraviolet light are less harmful, but higher frequencies of UVB and UVC rays may cause skin cancer after overexposure. X-rays have a higher frequency than ultraviolet waves, and prolonged exposure is dangerous to humans, but they are useful too. X-rays photograph bone through soft tissue, which lets doctors diagnose internal injuries. Emitted as nuclear radiation, gamma rays have the highest frequencies. They are extremely dangerous to humans and have no practical application. The world is revealed to us through the power of light. As scientists develop technology that reveals other forms of electromagnetic energy, we learn more about the very nature of the universe. You've been given all the information. Now it's your turn to discuss the questions. Take a moment to talk about the following.
How do lenses affect light?
What are some common uses of electromagnetic waves?
If you'd like to learn more about what you've just seen, go online or check out these books at your local library.
What do you like or dislike about television?
I like that for TV you get plenty of entertainment.
Well, there are certainly some shows on TV that can provide you with information to know more about what's going on around you.
I like to watch TV to relax.
I like the realism of TV.
I definitely like reality TV. I'm a big fan of that.
What I don't like is that it can have a negative influence on its audience.
Commercials all the time.
Well, I dislike that there are a lot of the same things on.
You start kind of becoming addicted to it.
When, like, you look up at the clock after a while and you see that it's been like 2 hours and you could have been doing other things that are probably better for you.
As you watch the second part of this program, keep these questions in mind.
What electromagnetic waves are used to create and transmit television?
What is the disadvantage of digital manipulation in television? Light and electromagnetism come together in the marvel of television. Using the properties of electromagnetism, we are able to bring the world to our doors.
Wait, did you ever wonder how all this happened? How you can turn that knob and enjoy a dramatic show, watch the ball game, or hear and see news from anywhere in the world? Well, it's quite a story, the story of television.
The wonder of television. 45 years ago, when there still was a Dumont network, television was the new baby in the family.
One day through television, the entire world will stream into our living rooms with the velocity of light.
The announcement of its birth had caused great excitement and curiosity. Today, television signals thread through our lives. A source of news and entertainment. We line up on the couch from all over to watch what's happening in the world. Seeing is believing, we say. A picture is worth 1,000 words. Even when people leave the couch for a sporting event, they pack portables so they will not miss a moment. Somehow, it seems more alive when it says live in the corner of the screen.
One of the most violent accidents we've ever seen at the Daytona International Speedway. 7 or 8 times coming over.
And indeed, television gives us views we could not get any other way. You ride in the race car with the driver. You stand without flinching as they hurtle toward you. And without batting an eye, you float across the track, free as a bird. It seems so easy we forget we are looking at a triumph of modern technology.
Nice shot. Beautiful. Wait. Stay on this. Ready, 10. And let him come past you a little bit. Here. In the victory lane. Let him come past you. Very nice. Very nice.
The Triumph in this particular case looks like a 5-foot-long metal mosquito. You are able to swoop across the field because somebody built a remote-controlled helicopter and put a television camera in it. And somebody else figured out how to turn light into electric signals, transmit them, and turn them back into light again.
Take seven, trouble!
To cover the annual Daytona 500 stock car race, the CBS network has shipped in 31 cameras, 17 videotape recorders, 7 semi-trailers stacked with every sort of high-tech broadcast television device, 141 people, including 3 producers who sound like they share one brain.
Scoring.
10, 9, 8.
a director who seems to have 3 brains,
Lose the man. Ready 11. Take 11.
and Flying Cam with no brain at all. The cars at Daytona are whipping around the oval at an average speed of 190 miles an hour. The video signals that bring you pictures of the race are traveling at 186,000 miles a second. We will walk you through the entire television process. But first, to get a sense of how complicated that process can be, follow the electronic ride the video takes on its way to you. First, light images are turned into flowing electrons in the aerial camera, the first of many changes for the signal before it finally sees the light. Next, electrons are transformed into microwaves beamed from the tiny helicopter to a man holding an antenna on a pole. The waves are changed back to electrons again and zapped down the wire to television sets in the director's booth.
Oh, we're going to do a pit stop live with Flying Cam. Ready 25.
The signal is beamed up to a relay satellite and down to New York. In the network control room, commercials are added to the electronic stream. Then, back up into space, through another satellite link, and down to local stations like KCBS in Los Angeles, California, which will add its commercials to the stream. A short trip to the top of a nearby mountain, where they are revved up into a television broadcast signal. That TV signal goes to more than 5 million households in the Los Angeles area. For viewers hooked up to a cable television service, the signal will be captured and converted into a different electromagnetic frequency and fed for miles down coaxial cables or fiber optic lines. A final conversion, then through a wire to one of thousands of homes in Thousand Oaks, California, where a television set tuned to Channel 2 converts the signal back into light waves that show what is happening at Daytona. No matter where you look, TV is there. And no matter how you look, you are looking at a clump of individual atoms revealed by a Zeiss electron tunneling microscope. The researchers watch them on a glowing video screen. Circling high above, the Hubble Space Telescope could be described as the world's most powerful television camera. Its views of distant galaxies and nebulae are captured by a high-resolution television pickup device deep in the telescope and transmitted from orbit. From infinitesimal to infinity, and from the sublime to the slightly ridiculous, this is television.
I can hear you. He hears you guys. Talk to him.
Mark, Ned, Jarrett wants to know how it's going out there. You got enough to handle these guys?
You're about to blow my head off. I need you to just let me go here. We're fixing
Okay,
lose it. I'll kill it.
The picture of the driver trying to race and conduct an interview at the same time starts out as light waves. A machine cannot take in the world all at once any more than you can take in a page of print at a glance. You have to scan the page, reading word after word. A television camera breaks the scene into bits and scans the world a bit at a time. The scanning here has been slowed and enlarged. In real time, you do not see the individual scans. In the earliest days of TV, breaking the world into bits was done mechanically by a spinning wheel.
TV was invented in 1886, about 100 years ago, by a German undergraduate student. He got a patent for it, but he didn't get a thesis out of it. So those of you who are going to school ought to think about that. He invented a mechanical system.
The student was Paul Nipkow. He had the idea of using a metal disc with a series of holes punched in a wide spiral pattern around the outside. As the disc rotated, the holes moved across the scene, each one slightly lower. It was like spying on the world through a constantly moving keyhole. Once the image was scanned into a long stream of electrical pulses, it could be sent through a wire just like signals from the newly invented telephone. By the year 1928, there were 15 television stations on the air in the United States spinning out mechanically scanned images. The first drama on television was called The Queen's Messenger. It was performed before 3 scanning disc cameras. Herbert Hoover, who was then Secretary of Commerce, was the first American politician to appear on television live from Washington, D.C. to New York in 1927. Little did he know what he was starting. Across the Atlantic, Scottish inventor John Logie Baird persuaded the British to start broadcasting with a scanning disc system he had developed. In Baird's invention, as in the American system, the receiving sets had spinning wheels rotating at the same speed as the scanning disc in the camera. By 1934, the British mechanical TV system was beginning to build an audience, but it did not last. Engineers had already decided they needed something better than a mechanical system. For one thing, a 21-inch picture would have required a disc about 14 feet across.
What you need in a electronic television system is something that does not have a lot of moving parts that you have to adjust at home. So successful television developed from the perfection of cathode ray tube technology.
That is where Philo T. Farnsworth enters the picture. Philo was a precocious farm kid from Rigby, Idaho, and he dreamed up an electronic television system when he was just 14 years old. He is now generally regarded as the father of electronic television.
Phil said, "I have to tell you, there's another woman in my life." And before I could faint, he said, her name is television.
The basic technique for electronic television popped into Philo's head one spring morning while he was plowing potatoes. As he went about his task back and forth, he realized that by turning at the end of each row, he had, in effect, scanned that field with one long, unbroken furrow. Of course, TV scanning would have to be a little faster than a horse-drawn plow.
He said, "I'm going to tame electrons. It's the only thing that's fast enough to do this." It was just beyond anything that I could fathom. I just was so impressed and so bowled over.
Farnsworth created the image dissector, which is the first successful electronic pickup tube. He also built an electronic receiver, which he called the oscillite, and was able in the late 1920s to give the first demonstrations of electronic television.
For the next 60 years, television cameras used vacuum tubes to create video signals from images. The light would strike the front of a glass tube coated with a photosensitive compound, and anywhere light hit, it would leave an electric charge in the coating. A beam of electrons moved back and forth by electromagnets, scanned the tube from behind, and turned the image into a stream of electric current. Philo may have invented it, but David Sarnoff gets credit for bringing television to the masses. He used the 1939 World's Fair to unveil television with President Franklin Roosevelt speaking on a live hookup.
And I declare it open to all mankind.
During World War II, television faded almost to black.
1945, the war over.
And the world was about to witness the birth of modern television. Factories were soon turning molten glass and jumbled wiring into finished TV sets at the rate of tens of thousands a month. The world could not get enough of television.
How and another bad guy bit the dust.
And here he is, the one, the only.
He's a waste of time.
Oh, that's me. All right, now may we have our next contestant, please?
In 1957, the game show I've Got a Secret featured an obscure guest who stumped the panel.
We will call him simply Dr. X. Now, Doctor, if you will whisper your secret to me, we will show it at the same time to the folks out there.
Philo Farnsworth's patents had run out. He was in poor health.
Is this some kind of a machine that might be painful when it's used?
Yes, sometimes it's most painful.
Gary Moore thanked him for giving us television and honored him with a carton of cigarettes and $80 in cash.
But unfortunately, television being what it is, it's your baby and we're out of time. So here are your Winston, sir, the money that you won, and our eternal gratitude. I'd be out of work if it weren't for you. Thank you very much.
If Philo Farnsworth had gone on to invent color TV, he might have won 3 cartons of cigarettes because, in fact, a color camera is 3 cameras in one. In broadcast color cameras, the light streaming through the lens enters a prism, which splits light into 3 colors. Identical images, except that one comes out of the prism in red light, one in green, and one in blue, the 3 basic colors of light. In modern cameras, these separated images are sent to 3 light-sensitive computer chips, CCDs, or charge-coupled devices. This is the TK41, one of the first color cameras. It weighed half a ton.
So basically, what I'm here for is, is just to get an
Cameras are so small and light that they can peep through a pinhole in glasses frames. Fiber optics link the glasses to a CCD chip hidden in a purse.
So basically this conversation is not going any further than right here.
A favorite for producers of tabloid television.
Just between you and me. What did you say about him? I came here alone. No one's with me. It's not going beyond this table.
She said he was a very poor father. A no good person.
There are guns on your TV, but there is also a gun in your set. There is a ray gun at the back of the picture tube firing a thin beam to light up a tiny dot on your screen. All the excitement, drama, the death-defying thrills on television come down to a dot. When the beam isn't moving, all we are treated to is a random flickering dot, or so it seems. But as the dot begins to move, to scan left to right, the dot leaves a glowing line. The lines merge to form a picture, and you're watching television. The first experimental television sets used a dot about this large, which resulted in a very crude picture. A smaller dot can paint more lines and show more detail. In today's television, the dot is so small it scans more than 500 lines. Each time the dot scans the whole screen, it makes one picture and snaps back. Engineers call these fields. 2 fields merge together to create a whole picture the engineers call a frame. TVs in North America and Japan give you 30 frames a second. Other countries have different numbers of lines and frames. But all television sets in the world make pictures with flying, flickering dots. You don't see the flicker because, in this case, you can't believe your eyes.
Now, there are two facets of human vision that allow that to work. And one of them is, how many pictures do I have to show you in a second, flashing before you'll see a picture that looks like it's constantly on? That's called the critical fusion frequency, or the flicker frequency. Now, the second step is, if I send you still pictures, one after the other, how quickly do I have to send you those pictures with a little change in each one for it to appear as if something is moving, as opposed to just a series of still pictures? And that's a lower number. Turns out 16 different pictures a second is good enough to give you the sensation of smooth, continuous motion. So 16 different images a second is enough to make it look like the picture is moving. 50, 60 flashes a second is what you need in order to make the picture look like it's constantly on.
Moving pictures painted by a tiny dot scanning sideways across an average TV screen at the speed of 9,825 miles an hour. You probably wouldn't want anything in your living room traveling at almost 10,000 miles an hour. But nothing is moving here except electrons and photons, and an occasional potato chip. Inside the picture tube in a near vacuum, electrons boil off hot metal and are propelled and aimed by electromagnets. The screen is coated with a compound that glows when bombarded by the electrons. A color tube has 3 compounds that glow in 3 different colors. For instance, what makes you see red is yttrium oxysulfide europium. There are more than 1 billion TV screens in the world today, and every year that number grows. Imagine a radio that could tune the entire electromagnetic spectrum. AM radio would come first, then CB radio, model airplane signals, then FM radio, pilots talking to towers, garage door openers, cell phones. Eventually, our super radio could tune in to the energy-popping popcorn in the kitchen microwave, and all the colors of light and X-rays and cosmic rays. All different frequencies of electromagnetic energy pouring out across the spectrum. We conjured up a new radio. Now use your imagination to conjure up the mess at the Daytona 500 if we couldn't transmit signals, if each car had a wire connecting it to the television truck. The scenario is impossible to contemplate. So, to put you in the driver's seat, technicians hook up their miniature cameras to miniature transmitters. Microwave signals, 1,000 times weaker than the microwaves in your oven, carry the picture to your television. Microwaves, like race cars, have trouble passing through solid objects. That is why the race car camera transmitters are aimed in the one direction where there are no obstructions, straight up.
We have to have an unimpeded path for our microwave signal. So we just transmit it directly up to the helicopter and straight down to our trailer.
A helicopter hovers almost a mile above the track throughout the race. Its sole purpose is to receive signals from the cars and relay them back to the television truck. A company called Broadcast Sports Technology developed the system.
What camera is this?
Inside their control trailer, the remote car cam operator can select one of several cameras bolted into the cars. He can aim the camera and even clean smashed bugs off the lens, all by remote control.
Where's Sterling's camera? Ready, 23. Ready, 22. Take 22.
As the director chooses different cameras, the stream of images is also transmitted into the sky toward a satellite hanging 22,300 miles above the equator. At that distance, it takes exactly 1 day for a satellite to orbit the Earth. Since it's rotating in sync with the Earth's surface, from the ground it looks as if it's not moving, as if it's just hanging up there. But you can't really broadcast with microwaves. Over-the-air television stations use a lower frequency. Still, TV signals work best with a clear line of sight, so TV transmitters are put on as high a place as possible. For Los Angeles, that means Mount Wilson. The output power is 37.8 kilowatts. Not a lot of power, actually. About the same as the energy produced by the engine in a Volkswagen Beetle. But enough to change the world.
Hello, hello, hello.
It's probably worth noting that one of the first magnetic recording devices ever made was a telephone answering machine. It was designed by Valdemar Poulsen in 1898. Poulsen's antique answering machine is part of the collection displayed at the former Ampex Museum of Magnetic Recording in California, and now maintained by the Silicon Valley Archives at Stanford University. The collection traces a century of man's attempts to create a machine that can't forget.
In nature, everything is constantly changing. Light is oscillating at millions of times a second. Sound is oscillating at thousands of times a second. And these oscillations we've got to capture.
All magnetic recording begins with an electromagnet called a record head. Computer data, music, moving pictures are all converted first to electrical pulses, and the head converts those into magnetic pulses.
And then the tape is run through that changing field, and those magnetic fields are impressed upon the tape. The tape is coated with thousands of little teeny-weeny magnets, in effect. It's rust.
That rust, the engineers tell us, will store television programs for decades.
Videotape recorder was the very first production videotape recorder to go into service anywhere in the world. This machine went from Ampex Redwood City, where it was built, down to CBS Television City in Hollywood, where it went into service on November 30th, 1956 to record Douglas Edwards and the news.
These bulky machines ruled the television world for 20 years. But they were very expensive and complicated, and there were bothersome technical problems. 4 record heads mounted on a disc screened around at 14,400 RPM. It required 32 passes for the video heads to complete one picture. If the machines were not constantly monitored and adjusted during playback, segments of the recorded picture would not match exactly. And it was impossible to play back slow motion and still frames, common now even on home systems. Ampex engineers needed to get rid of the banding. To do so, they had to devise a way to record one complete video frame with each spin of a single recording head across the tape.
One of the original videotape team members, named Alex Maxey, a mechanical engineer, got an idea one day. He was playing with this dog, and it was a bachelor pad, and they had a roll of toilet paper for some reason out, and he was spinning the toilet paper around the dog, and the dog was spinning around inside the toilet paper as he was winding it around, and all of a sudden the light bulb went off. In that flash came to him in one instant, you could get rid of segmentation by a nice long scan with the tape wrapped around this great big drum, and because you're getting rid of segmentation, you're generating one full picture with each revolution of the head. That means you have instant replay, i.e. slow motion and stop action, in a way that would have been impossible with any of the other technologies. Slant scan or helical scan recording is the basis for all home VCRs, videocassette recorders.
So now the information was stored on the tape in long diagonal stripes, long enough to hold a whole picture. By the mid-1970s, videotape recorders using the helical scan system and transistor circuits were being made small enough to carry around in a backpack. The world was set for the invasion of the minicams. news events, weddings,
Mr. and Mrs. Ned Judge.
birthdays, and bat mitzvahs were now available for prime time. New developments meant more television programs could be produced less expensively, which meant remotes got to work out like never before.
I dedicate the news channel for America, the cable news network.
Ted Turner started CNN and built it into a worldwide presence. Some Connecticut folks talked Getty Oil into financing ESPN. We live in an analog world. The notes of the melody rise and fall, but they glide into each other with no dividing lines. The colors of the flowers blend into each other. Television, too, has been analog.
The transformation of light into electronics, and at the other end, electronics into light, is by definition an analog transformation. It can only be an analog transformation because you and I and this scene are analog. We're not digital, and we never will be, I hope.
To make our analog world digital, it must be converted. If sound and pictures are to get from here to you in a digital stream, they must first be transformed from tones and shades to ones and zeros. The pictures and sound are sliced up, sampled, translated into digital codes, and sent down the wire. Digital video has a lot of advantages. No snow, pristine pictures, more information transmitted more efficiently. And as engineers build digital circuits into television, they are turning television into something else. Digital technology not only provides the pictures, but also creates space on the cable for all new channels through signal crunching, through video compression.
Well, let's hope that when we compress pictures, we don't turn our faces purple or make the picture disappear into a corner of the screen.
Video compression does not quite describe the process. Perhaps freeze-drying is a more appropriate term to describe how over 500 channels are brought to your set. The machines transmit just the essence of the video and reconstitute it at the other end.
The point of compression is simply to cut down the number of bits you need in a television signal. Okay, from the millions of bits that the studio signal has to a lower level, smaller number that can go through telephone wires, fit on compact discs, fit on cassettes, go through satellites, and be broadcast through the air.
Compression can be achieved because of one obvious fact: much of TV is repetitive. We're not talking about driving around in circles. We're talking about repetitive information in the video stream.
Now imagine for a moment aiming your movie camera or your television camera at a still scene where absolutely nothing's moving. Every single one of those frames is identical. So they're redundant. Why can't I just send you the bits for that first frame only once and tell the television set, repeat those bits till I tell you something different is coming along?
When Mike Wallace slammed car 90 into the wall at Daytona, the crash was captured by a stationary camera. If you look at the crash frame by frame, you can see the parts of the picture that do not change. Then if we jump forward 30 frames or so, we can see that only some parts of the scene have changed. The Wallace car has moved closer, but the background stays the same.
So the first trick in trying to reduce the massive number of bits in an original digital television picture down to a feasible or reasonable number is to try and find and capture and identify those regions of the picture that stay the same.
But the most intriguing twist of digital television is that the pictures can be twisted and turned and flipped, manipulated in ways not possible before.
Right now we have
Old analog TV had a few tricks. The television weatherman playing to a blank green screen is one example. It is called chroma key. Expensive hardware looked for that particular color of green in a picture and substituted other video, like a weather map. Now digital manipulation can be done entirely by software with just a click of the mouse. colorizing black and white movies was just the beginning. Images manipulated by machine intelligence can be altered so much that even the original cameraman wouldn't recognize them. In one experiment, the programmer digitally manipulated frames from an I Love Lucy show, memorizing the entire living room set and removing the actors.
And lo and behold, you end up with a widened scene that shows you the full width of the living room. Then you go back, cut out the actors, overlay those actors back into that original panorama now, and you end up with either Lucy a la CinemaScope or a separate version where you can follow each one of the actors all alone.
There is a worrisome side to the wonder of digital manipulation. It is increasingly difficult to know what's real. Manipulation can make programming vastly more entertaining, but it can spell real trouble if tricks are used in news and documentary programs. To demonstrate, we will show you a trick we used earlier in this program. Remember the race fans watching TV on top of their recreational vehicles? The close-up of the TV? Well, they were watching the race live, but our camera could not get a usable picture of the race on their TV screen. So we selected a frame, froze it, and then using digital manipulation created a new shot, a slow-motion wreck scene from the race coverage, speeding it back up to normal. A graphic element from another live shot. A reflection of the folks watching the TV, and a wiggle to make the shot look handheld. We just thought you should know. It was the only sneaky thing we did. Honest. Lippmann and many others see the digital revolution in television not as a continuum of TV technology, but as a complete break with the past.
The whole point of digital TV is that we don't have to mimic the evolution of analog television. We have a chance to do it differently. So don't view it as 500 individual channels. View it as the capacity for 500 different views of the world and different movies and different sporting events from which you could build your own designer channel, the channel made for you.
And that is the biggest difference digital television brings to the home. A salad bar of video and a smart box ready to toss it all together to suit the tastes of each viewer. With the power of light, television has brought the world closer. Now, at the press of a button, you have the world at your fingertips. Images from every corner of the earth traveling into your living room at the speed of light. You've been given all the information. Now it's your turn to discuss the questions. Take a moment to talk about the following.
What electromagnetic waves are used to create and transmit television?
What is a disadvantage of digital manipulation in television?
We hope you've enjoyed this assignment discovery journey through light and electromagnetism. If you'd like to learn more about what you've just seen, go online or check out these books at your local library.